Very well. Then allow me to give you this. What is it? This is the N Gear. It is a portable device with a multitude of functions. It should prove invaluable to you.
I'll bet you didn't expect to see this in today's retro review. I was browsing the flea market this weekend looking for some new Nintendo DS games to do retro reviews on, and honestly, I was only there to look for Pokemon Soul Silver and Heart Gold because I really want to find it cheaper than $50 than everybody else seems to be charging. But what I found was this. I paid $45 for this little gem from back in the 1990s, 2 games, plus a power cord. $45. For that price, I couldn't say no. So, despite the fact that I normally don't go behind the current systems with my reviews, I am going to do a retro review for not only Sega fans, but also Neptunia Rebirth 2 fans, because as you know, the character Nepgear is based on this bulky piece of technology right in front of us. Here is my retro review of the Sega Game Gear. So let's take a look at this. Sega made a pretty bulky handheld. I mean, look how thick this is. This is thicker than my thumbnail. It's probably thicker than 2 or 3 PS Vita Slim stacked right next to it. Despite the fact that it is big and relatively heavy for a handheld, when you hold it in your hands, it still feels pretty comfortable to use. It looks really bulky, especially compared to today's tech that kind of goes with the smaller, the thinner, the better. This really felt comfortable, and it still does. So, as far as input and everything, let's take a look at what we got on this system. On the front, we have a circular D-pad right here, and 2 buttons over here for face buttons. They don't really have names, they're just called button 1 and button 2 rather than A and B, X and Y. You know how it goes. And we got a start button here. Right down here we got this massive mono speaker for sound. And we have a, I don't know, this is probably about 4-inch screen. It's about 3/4 of the screen size as the PlayStation Vita has. The bottom doesn't really have anything on it. The sides don't either. Now let's look at the top. Let's talk about what this stuff is at the top. Here is our wheel slider for volume. And here's a headphone jack. When you stick in the headphones, you get stereo sound through headphones rather than the mono sound from the mono speaker. This is a mystery port for me. It has an extension text right next to it. I talked to the guy I bought it from and looked online, and really the best conclusion I found was that it was for controllers. I didn't find any official confirmation of this, so we're just going to go with it might be a controller port. Over here, we've got a power port. Sega, being ingenious with their ideas that came way before their time, decided that not only would they have their handheld run on batteries, but they would have a power charger that could plug into the wall, powering it just like you'd power a home console. So if you want to play Sonic the Hedgehog or Streets of Rage while you're at home, you can just plug in the AC power cord and not worry about wasting batteries. Then we got this, which is the slot to turn the system on and off. Now, here's the cartridge slot. The cartridge slot was interesting. Not only because you could put game cartridges in it, like Jurassic Park, but Sega was wacky enough to make 2 peripherals that fit into this cartridge slot. One of the peripherals was pretty wacky, and one of them was pretty ingenious. The wacky one was a TV tuner. You could plug a TV tuner with an antenna right down here, whip out the antenna, and you could watch television on your Sega Game Gear. Note that this was only analog, so if you buy one now, the whole converting everything to digital will definitely cause a problem with that. The other one was an adapter that allowed you to plug Sega Master System games into the Game Gear and play them. Unlike recent Unlike recent systems that have iffy backwards compatibility, that converter let you play any Master System game on the Game Gear. Any one you want, and they all worked perfectly. So, now let's get back to the design after I got my little talk about the cartridge slot over, because I really just wanted to talk about that TV tuner. Because how can you not? So, back here, you've got serial number, your patents, Game Gear model number 2110G, made in China, and honestly, this is really well preserved, so you can tell the person who owned this back almost 30 years ago really took care of it. Now, these two pouches are for batteries. We got one on each side. Unlike the Game Boy and the Game Boy Color that used 3 to 4 batteries, this thing took 6 AA batteries to run. 6 batteries. That is a lot of batteries. Even in today's world, that's a lot of batteries. So, if you wanted to take this thing on the go with you, you were packing 6 batteries, and you were good to go. So, that's about all there is for the design. There's not really anything else I want to go into. There are all these screws in the back, but I don't really feel like taking this thing apart. I'm really scared to take it apart because I don't want to break it. So, let's talk about how it performs. As far as feel is concerned, like I said earlier, it's comfortable. Despite how big it is, the hands wrap around it really nice, and some more recent handheld gamers might have their index fingers up here because they're looking for invisible triggers, because all handhelds now have triggers on them. But all in all, the button interface really works well, and the input really is spot on when you're playing a game. So aside from being comfortable in your hands, let's talk about how the performance goes. Now this big mono speaker, this is a big mono speaker. With today's standards, a mono speaker just isn't really that great. Granted, some people still put mono speakers on it. I'm looking at Nintendo with the Nintendo 2DS with its mono speaker, but it's really not up to par with the standards of today. The good thing about this is plug in headphones right here, and you've got stereo sound. So if you want to plug in headphones, you are good to go. Now let's talk about screen quality. Let's put something in. Let's put Jurassic Park in. Because, really, I'm a Jurassic Park nut. So let's take a look at the screen quality. As you can see, screen quality distorts easily when you're going between various angles. Because, like, look, in the video, it looks good right there. But when I'm looking at it off screen, that image is heavily distorted. Past this is the whole color scheme. A lot of games just look blurry, but a lot of games with the text, it looks really blurry. Like Jurassic Park's intro has moving text, and it's really hard to read on the screen here. So I'll just wait for it to pop up. Okay, so we got our helicopter going in. And helicopter going in. When the text appears, it'll be going and sliding across the bottom of the screen, and it's really hard to read, even for me, and I consider myself to have pretty good eyesight. The color quality just isn't great. I mean, it's good enough to be able to play all of these classic games, but it's eye-straining at times. Now, the other part of the performance I wanted to go into, I already talked about how well the input works, and one thing I wanted to say is how convenient it is with cartridges. This probably isn't a very good idea to do, but when you had the Game Boy, if you removed a cartridge, you got a screen like this. You had to power off the system and power it back on to use another game. The Game Gear, stick another cartridge in, boom! It completely goes right away. Now, it's probably not a good idea to do this to the cartridges or the system, but it's a little convenience that I found to be interesting. The last thing we want to talk about with performance is this right here, battery life. When I was researching online, I read all kinds of recent articles and discussions saying that the Game Gear had maybe 2 hours of battery life on 6 brand new AA batteries. I didn't really take this as truth. I wanted to test for myself, so I bought new batteries. These are generic CVS pharmacy batteries, so they're not really that great. But I stuck them in there yesterday, played, and the system did not die until we had been going for almost 6 hours. That's pretty on par with the lifetime of current handhelds. So 6 hours on a 20-some-year-old handheld, that's pretty good. And if you buy rechargeable batteries, then you don't have to buy batteries all the time. It's just something to note. So, as we wrap this up, Sega fans, Neptunia fans, or just handheld fans in general, this is the Sega Game Gear. It's really dated, as you all know, because it came out in the 1990s. And it had a lot of ideas that really weren't implemented into handhelds for a long time afterwards. I mean, this thing has a backlit LCD screen. Nintendo did not incorporate an LCD, a backlit screen in a handheld until the Game Boy Advance SP came out, which was over a decade after the Game Gear came out. The main problems you're going to have with the Game Gear are 1, the screen quality, and 2, the mono speaker. The mono speaker is easily fixable with headphones though. So, any retro gamer that is looking into buying a Game Gear, you can do so because I found mine in a flea market for $30. And most of the games are around for $3, $4, $5 a piece. So if you're looking to buy a Game Gear and you want to play some games, you can do it without spending much money. I would overall rate the Sega Game Gear an 8 out of 10. So if you have any further questions about this device or about my channel or anything else, feel free to hit me up in the comments, or you can head over to my site. It is www.reviewstogo.com. Thanks for watching and have a great day.